Thank you for playing. This was seen at the end of a lot of games, especially early on, where a lot of money, relatively, was spent to be able to play these games. Also a lot of technical know-how. I mean, if you guys remember back in the day, just setting up these consoles was a little awkward, especially on PC. Getting games to run was very strange. But now things are a lot easier. Anybody, anywhere can pick up their phone and basically be a gamer. And maybe even an esports star, depending on, your proclivity to using the mobile touchscreens. But yeah, now we have laptops, we have all sorts of consoles. You can even be a retro gamer if you want to be. And the fantastic thing is a lot of games are free, a lot of games are cheap, and a lot of games go on sale. But the company that debatably really started it all, which maybe you could say is like Atari or the arcades, but no, I mean, like Nintendo really made gaming mainstream. And I remember my Super Nintendo. I remember getting Mario All-Stars, Donkey Kong Country, Mega Man X. I remember running them down and beating them all. And I remember feeling such a feeling of gratitude from the developers. That's the sensation that came for me, at least, was that this was a new art form. This was a new medium, and this was something really important that was happening. The thank yous at the end really felt real, and it was a sense of connection for me. A connection to the artist, a connection to the people that actually also played, and maybe beat the game, maybe hopefully beat the game. Not everyone gets to do that. Mega Man X was hella hard, but if you beat the game, then hey, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're family. That's what it feels like. But lately, I had been thinking about doing a video on the history of game prices, and I see some videos like that already exist. Or what about this feeling of like even indie games, right? There's different tiers of games. You have cheap games, freemium, etc., AAA, obviously, and then you have like quadruple A, debatably, where games are now going to be $90. So it's like there's this weird price inflation that seems to be happening with like all games from all tiers, where the free-to-play games are more like expensive with their cosmetics, their microtransactions, which aren't so micro anymore, and then the indie games, which really should be like $1 to $5, they're $15 to $20. The $20 games are $40 games, the $40 games are $60 games, and the $60 games are freaking $90. That's with tax. With tax, okay, it's like $80. Nintendo is now selling games at $80, and with tax, it's going to round up to like $90. Let alone, if you got to pay for the online subscription, and if you need to replace your controllers because you're smashing it out way too hard and you get like stick drift. Playing video games should, in my opinion, have gotten cheaper. I thought that we were getting more efficient, and I thought that it meant something. That very end credit line of thank you for playing, I thought that really meant something bigger. I thought we were trying to make something. I thought that we were creating a community. I thought that this was a movement, that all together we were telling humanity to be more playful, keep the child alive, and to stretch your brain a little bit. Try new things, be weird, be wacky, stay childish, stay curious. But really what it seems like is thank you for playing has turned into, and maybe it always was, thank you for paying. Now look, this Nintendo Direct was kind of interesting. There were some really neat things, I have to say. And I've definitely been a Nintendo fan for a while, but I've never really covered it on the channel because, come on, like you know those channels, right? Like Nintendo channels are Nintendo channels. Those are Nintendo people, that's how it works. I don't even know what I am. I'm trying to figure it out, but I needed to get this off my chest that I have a Switch. I've had lots of Nintendo consoles. I love Nintendo, but it's true that it just feels so much more expensive to be a part of those conversations. Yeah, I would love to try to do my best to have little Mario Kart parties and stuff like that. I've got a projector and I love to have Smash and Mario Kart parties, for sure IRL, but at the same time, nobody really, not everyone has these games. Not everyone has these games, not everyone has access to these games. You know what everyone does have access to? Probably a machine that could probably play Marvel Rivals, probably just good enough, and so everyone knows Marvel Rivals, everyone knows Fortnite, everyone knows the mobile games, everyone knows free-to-play games, and that's, for the longest time, why I worked with free-to-play specific channels and websites, and on my own channel, really champion free games or cheap games and indie games, and look, we all love indie games, but it does feel like, man, video gaming is just more expensive more than ever, and at the same time, I don't know what it is, if we're all just becoming a little bit more educated, but we're catching on to the tricks and to the gimmicks, and we're really catching on to a lot of these developers, these huge, massive companies that make more money than we could possibly fathom, and yet they're producing content that's really just kind of good. That's just kind of okay. And why would I do that when I could probably go to Game Pass, or I could go pick up a small indie game, especially on a Steam sale, and have kind of a life-changing experience with some of these indie darlings, you know? Like the first time you played Stardew Valley, like that's something, right? And sure, I mean, we can go back and say, yeah, the first time I played Mario 64, the first time I played Mario Kart, the first time I played a Metroid or a Zelda, yeah, absolutely. I remember going to GameStop, or they were called EB Games, and there's different game stores near you where you can trade in games for money. I used to do this. I would go and trade in all my games. I remember trading in like 20 PlayStation games just so that I could have a Zelda game. They were 2 games. It was Oracle of Seasons and Ages. Those were freaking amazing, by the way. So I love Nintendo games. Don't, at me for that. I do. I think that there is some genuine whimsy with these titles, and I would love to play the new ones, but there is just no universe where my indie game marketing / starving artist YouTuber self is going to be able to purchase a $90 game. In any universe, no. Even if it was like of my favorite series, Elden Ring 2 or something like that, it's just not going to happen for me. In fact, almost all of the games that I own on my current Switch were either gifts or trades, or there was actually a random Nintendo sale and I was able to get some. But there's just no way that I'm going to spend $90. And so this is what I want to kind of rant on. I was actually doing some research because I was thinking about doing a more articulated essay on this topic, but I wanted it to be more emotional because I think a lot of us are having an emotional reaction. I'm seeing across YouTube, on TikTok, in Discords, people are like, yo, Nintendo's being kind of greedy. What the crap, For this company that really wants to hold people, I think not hostage, that's so toxic, but it wants people to be absorbed and to continuously purchase from its IPs, it's it wants people to be Mario Kart fans, to be Smash fans, Mario fans. It just really wants that to continue to propagate through generations, which that's, something that I found beloved too whenever I gifted my son his first video game, which was a Pokemon game. Absolutely generational. Nintendo has that power, but instead it seems like it's weaponizing that in the worst possible way. So you have these channels that are Nintendo channels, but there's also Nintendo people just like there's Disney people, and it's like they can get away with it. And I don't want them to get away with it anymore. I'm tired of these giant companies getting away with stuff like this. Right now, more than ever, especially in America, look, shit's hitting the fan, and I'm just not going to be a part of it. I'm going to vote with my wallet, and I'm not going to. It's time to be a patient gamer, buy games on sales, check out indie darlings, and in fact, there is a ton of games that frankly really do compete with these Nintendo titles that are really great. I know there is some uniquity, but look, here's the thing, guys. You gotta make a choice. $90. You know how many games you can buy with $90 at a Steam sale? Insanity. But not only that, there's so much money grubbing happening just throughout the entire ecosystem with the Nintendo lineup, and I don't know why Nintendo does this. I don't know what is going on in these companies, and I have to say that overall, what I've noticed from Japanese companies is just a lot of weird decisions, a lot of whimsy sometimes, but then also there's this combination of very corporate, dry, and boring, weird ideas that just never go anywhere. If you've been a part of the Nintendo ecosystem for a while, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You can list off oh, this game was really cool and this game was really cool, but then behind any one good game, there's actually a ton of just random bullshit. So here's one where they have this weird Switch 2 tech demo thing that it's supposed to be packaged in with the game, but this actually costs money. And this is just sort of a simulation of walking around and kind of learning about the engineering of the device, which I think would be so cool and so educational, and it could be really inspiring. But anyways, I guess it's going to be filled with mini games, at that. So maybe it's I guess that's the gimmick, is it's supposed to be a sort of arcade situation. I've actually had a few of these. There was one by Namco and whatever. I've had a few of these jukebox video games, I don't know, walking simulator things before. All boring. They were all from Japan too, by the way. And what is happening? Why is this a paid for game? And I don't want to elaborate too much on that. Everyone's going to be talking about it. Everyone's going to be ranting about it. But what I want to say is that I think that these companies and these people who are in charge of making these decisions are absolutely missing the point. So yes, you can totally do some research and see that video game prices used to be more expensive, but then they kind of got more affordable. And wages used to not be as good, and technically, I guess the median wage is rising, and so this is in line with I don't know, all the stats, all the math really just lines up. It's like, oh yeah, on average, people can afford a little bit more, with tariffs and things like that, it's getting more expensive to make games, and these games are bigger and better. They're probably not, but, it's so they need to be $90. And I have to agree. I looked at the data, at least what I, parsed barely, and it does seem that, like, at first glance, at the surface level, that makes sense. But so clearly, there is a real disconnect. There is an emotional disconnect. And that's why I'm making this video emotionally, is that because for the people who grew up with Nintendo, this generation, I guess, of the older millennials, maybe some young Gen X, etc., and then, obviously we have Gen Z now, we are so interested in playing games. We love video games, but we also can't afford these games. And what a freaking tragedy that is. What an opportunity for Nintendo to be just really the greatest guys ever and come out with like their own Nintendo/Game Pass system, which they actually do, but then they're just kind of using old emulations and they're just emulating their older games and not even all of them and not even, some it's like, it's not even good sometimes. What the hell? And that's a subscription fee on top of like you have to pay for the online to play online games, which already is such a dated fucking concept that I hate so much, even though I did it back in the Halo days. It's just, you have to spend so much money to get access to these games that I guess online and in an online culture, it really should just, it's a part of everyday conversation, People like just grew up with the Ocarina of Time, Mario 64, and things like this. People, so it's ingrained in our culture to a point, like Star Wars and Star Trek and things like this, that, maybe these things, it's really important to be able to talk on these things. It's important to be able to have access to these things, at least relatively. I mean, make it relatively cheap, make it relatively accessible, but there's a lot of games you literally can't even play right now. Some beloved Nintendo games that you cannot actually touch. In fact, I myself, I have to admit that I had to emulate a game. I had to debatably pirate a game that I did own at one time, but I lost it. I don't have my Super Nintendo anymore, but it just doesn't exist. There's nowhere to actually legally purchase it. And of course, you guys have this problem too. And so this is the era when Nintendo could have been like, all right, fine, we can do options. We'll keep games the same price. We'll have, an affordable game console like we've always done, and we'll focus on building our community in this generational interest. But instead, things are different. Nintendo's being weird. And we like Nintendo when it's whimsy weird, but not when it's corporate weird. That's not Nintendo. What the hell? And I mean, honestly, the games look really cool, but I can already start to nitpick and do little things where it's like, man, this just really looks like they're playing it safe, to be honest. Everything just is such a safe, obvious bet, in my opinion, for the big games. And then they do like the weirdest shit. It's like they spent the least amount of money possible on getting some of these other like second-hand games. Like I'm not going to go too much into it, but like, what? This is one of the biggest companies ever, right? And there's like the weirdest shit that's coming out. Sorry, I'm just venting. I'll show, I mean, the gameplay will be shown, but in the end, I'm sure like the wheelchair game, like what's going on? But anyways, it's just, with what's going on with Pokemon, it's with what's going on with Nintendo in general, it's just so hit or miss for a company that like defined video games. And in this era where we need to play the most, where we need to come together as a community the most, Nintendo just had such the opportunity to spearhead like as a mascot for all of us. Instead, they've shown their colors. They're a freaking big company, and they're just gonna get bigger, and they want more money. And that's what we are to them, is just a piggy bank. So, thank you for playing. Thank you for paying. Really.